Hello, Libra. Welcome to Zodiac Whisper Tarot. Let me begin with a single powerful truth. Not all love is real love, and sometimes, the person who says they care the most is the very one keeping you from becoming who you truly are. This message today is not random. If your soul brought you here, it's because the universe needs you to see something clearly, deeply, undeniably. There is a presence around you, Libra, a woman, or someone with strong feminine energy. She appears soft, maybe even nurturing. But under that surface is something else, a quiet attempt to shape, control, and dominate your life. Maybe you felt it as a pressure to say yes when your heart said no. Maybe you've noticed that you censor yourself in certain conversations. Or maybe you just feel tired, like part of you is disappearing and you don't know why. Let me be clear, this is not an attack. This is a revelation. Because you, Libra, are ruled by Venus, you crave peace, beauty, balance. And often, you'd rather bend than break the harmony. But today's message is not about keeping peace, it's about reclaiming your power. This week's energy is bringing something to the surface, a spiritual confrontation between illusion and truth. And I believe you already know which side you're on. You feel it. In your bones. In your breath. Something is off. And you're finally ready to say, enough. Because no one, no matter how close they are, no matter what they've done for you, has the right to shape your path in their image. You were not born to play a role in someone else's script. You are here to write your own story. And if that rings true for you, then Libra, you're not alone. You're exactly where you need to be. Now let me pause and say this from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for being here, for watching, for allowing these messages to reach you. Every like, every comment, every time you subscribe, you help grow this sacred space. You help keep the messages flowing. You make this channel, Zodiac Whisper Tarot, more than content. You make it a soul family. If this message has already struck a chord in you, leave me a comment with the number 6, the sacred number of balance, of harmony, of beauty rising from truth. That tells me you're ready to step into alignment with your higher self. And trust me, my dear Libra, you'll want to stay with me until the very end of this reading. What the universe is revealing in the next few moments will shift how you see someone in your life. Forever. So now, let me ask you, what brought you here today? What energy whispered to your heart and told you to press play? Let me know below, because this time, we're not just listening to a reading, we're answering a calling. When we speak of balance, Libra, we often imagine two scales holding equal weight. But in real life, balance is rarely about symmetry. It's about awareness, knowing when something subtle begins to tip the scale, even when everything appears calm on the surface. Right now, the universe is inviting you into that kind of awareness. Venus, your ruling planet, the source of your beauty, your grace, your desire for peace, is currently aligning with Taurus in a way that brings your self-worth and your closest relationships into sharp focus. And with Pluto, the planet of deep transformation, illuminating your 4th or 7th house, the roots of emotional attachment are being unearthed. You may not have expected this, but some truths only reveal themselves when the light gets uncomfortable. This week, you might begin to notice an invisible thread woven through your relationships, one that has been there for years, maybe even decades. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten. Instead, it shows up in the form of guilt, subtle pressure, or a quiet obligation you've carried without ever questioning it. There may be someone who's always meant well, who's helped you before, who's been a part of your growth. But now, their presence feels different. Heavier. As if they've become a gatekeeper of your choices, your emotions, even your voice. You find yourself asking, am I still being myself around this person? Or am I performing a role that keeps them comfortable? The truth is, not all control looks like control. Sometimes it comes in the shape of love, dressed as concern, wrapped in good intentions. And that's what makes it so hard to name. This is exactly what Pluto wants you to see, not to shame anyone, not to create distance where there doesn't need to be, but to empower you to pause and choose where your energy goes from now on. When you were younger, your survival might have depended on making peace, staying agreeable, smoothing the tension. But now, your peace depends on something else entirely: authenticity. Your ability to say no when you need to. Your power to define yourself, not by the expectations others place on you, but by the truth your own heart speaks. In this season, Libra, choosing balance doesn't mean staying silent. It means correcting the weight on your side of the scale. Sometimes, that requires saying the difficult thing. Setting the invisible boundary. Walking away from dynamics that ask you to keep sacrificing your clarity for someone else's comfort. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. And clarity is love, too. You may remember a gentle teaching from Scripture: let your yes be yes and your no be no. That isn't just about honesty, it's about energetic integrity. About letting your words, your presence, and your intentions align so fully that no one else has the space to twist them. When your energy is clean, you don't have to defend it. You just live it. And that, dear Libra, is what you're being called to do now. So if you've been feeling foggy, like someone else's energy is interfering with your ability to think clearly, this is your moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this really mine to carry? If the answer feels heavy, it's time to release it. Comment below with the words, I am the balance, if you're ready to step into your own sacred center where no one else gets to decide what's true for you. Sometimes, what looks like love is really just control in disguise. Not the loud kind that demands and dictates, but the quiet kind, the subtle kind, the kind that wraps itself in softness and history, and tells you it's for your own good. The reversed Empress in your spread today speaks directly to that truth. She is the woman who smiles with sweetness while reshaping your life to fit her comfort. She's the friend, the mentor, the mother figure, someone whose love may have once lifted you but now gently cages you. You feel it in the small silences, in the way you hesitate before you speak, in the careful edits you apply to your thoughts so they don't upset the balance. And ironically, Libra, you are the sign of balance, but what happens when that balance becomes self-erasure? The Justice card in your reading doesn't come as a coincidence. It is your mirror, a divine reflection of how far you've drifted from your own center. You've been trying to keep the peace, but at what cost? In relationships, you've learned to compromise, to consider, to weigh all sides. But there's a tipping point when fairness turns into self-sacrifice, and diplomacy becomes silence. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being part of the equation. And that, dear Libra, is not justice. That is distortion. And the universe is calling you back into alignment, back into truth. The Eight of Swords reveals the internal prison that's harder to escape than any external conflict. It's the belief that you owe someone your presence because they once helped you. It's the fear that setting a boundary makes you cold or ungrateful. It's the lie that you will hurt others if you choose yourself. And that's where healing begins, in recognizing that these are not facts, but fears. And fear, when examined with courage, loses its grip. What's truly radical is that your freedom has always been there. The door was never locked. You just needed to give yourself permission to walk through it. That's where the Queen of Swords arrives, not to attack, not to condemn, but to clarify. She cuts through fog with elegance and precision. She does not explain herself to those committed to misunderstanding her. She simply stands in her truth and lets it speak louder than justification ever could. This card reminds you that boundaries are not weapons. They are expressions of self-respect. You do not have to be cruel to be clear. You just have to be willing to be real. And perhaps the most beautiful card in this entire reading, the Star, shows up to remind you that healing is already on its way. This isn't just about protecting yourself from others. It's about remembering who you are when no one else is around to define you. When the noise fades, when the expectations fall away, what remains is your light. And no one can take that from you, no matter how many times you felt dimmed in their presence. That light, Libra, is your compass home. If you've ever believed that you had to be perfect to be loved, gentle enough, patient enough, agreeable enough, know this: you don't have to perform to be worthy. You don't have to be small to be accepted. True love does not ask you to shrink. It asks you to show up fully, without shame. Even Scripture reminds us that love rejoices in truth, not manipulation. And the truth is this: you are enough, just as you are. Now take a moment to ask yourself, is there a relationship in your life where you feel like you're constantly editing yourself, walking on eggshells, or playing a part? If so, you're not alone. But you are capable of choosing again. Of letting go, of stepping back, of reclaiming your voice. If you're ready, comment "I choose clarity" below and let that be the first word in your new chapter. It's often in the quiet moments, the ones between commitments, in the late night silence, or just before sleep, that your body starts speaking for the parts of you your mind has been trying to silence. A racing heart with no clear cause, a pit in your stomach, sleep that feels more like battle than rest. These aren't random. They are signals. Signs that something deeper is misaligned. This week's energy is gently but firmly guiding you to pay attention, not just to your thoughts, but to your entire system, your breath, your patterns, your choices, especially the ones you keep making for the sake of someone else's comfort. Your body has been your most honest witness. When anxiety hides in politeness, when obligation masks as loyalty, the body still tells the truth. And so, it's not a luxury to pause and check in, it's essential. Start simple: grounding practices, guided meditation, or healing frequency music like 528 Hz can help bring your nervous system back to center. Let your breath tell you what you're ready to release. Let your stillness become your sanctuary, not a space you avoid. You might also feel the urge to simplify what you consume, not as punishment or restriction, but as a declaration that your inner world matters. Nourish yourself with fresh vegetables, calming teas like chamomile, and magnesium-rich foods that support relaxation and emotional regulation. When your body feels respected, your boundaries become easier to hold. Now look at your work life. Is there a dynamic, perhaps with a female boss, colleague, or authority figure that feels off. Someone whose words may sound encouraging, but whose energy crosses lines. Libra, your desire for harmony sometimes delays your instinct to call things what they are. But discomfort is a message. If a professional relationship feels more draining than empowering, it's time to reevaluate the space they take up in your mental and emotional bandwidth. Finances are no different. This week is a call to pause and review. Are you spending money out of guilt, pressure, or the silent hope of keeping peace? True abundance comes when your money flows in alignment with your values. You are not here to prove your worth by giving, nor to fill emotional gaps with purchases that only bring temporary comfort. Let your spending reflect clarity, not coping. When it comes to love, the lines can blur even more. Ask yourself honestly, does this relationship allow you to keep your routines, your peace, your identity? Or have you gradually reshaped your life around another person's moods, timelines, and needs? Real love does not ask you to disappear. It does not erase your rhythm. And when a relationship starts to feel like a contract instead of a connection, it's time to rewrite your role. One powerful practice you can try is simple yet symbolic. Write down the name of the person you feel energetically controlled by, not in anger, but in truth. Beneath it, write this declaration: I return to you your energy. I reclaim my soul. You don't need to send it. Just write it, speak it, and burn or bury it with intention. Not as an act of vengeance, but as a gentle ritual of returning to yourself. And remember this: saying no to what diminishes you is also a yes to health, peace, and quiet power. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, but stands. This is the kind of strength you're being invited to embody now. The kind that honors both the tenderness of your heart and the clarity of your mind, the kind that sets you free without needing to explain why. You've likely heard that energy speaks louder than words. And in the case of Libra, that statement rings especially true. As a sign ruled by Venus, you often communicate with silence, with beauty, with your natural instinct to harmonize, but sometimes, that very harmony becomes a hiding place for what's actually imbalanced inside. When you agree through silence, when you keep choosing the path of least resistance, you may unknowingly give others permission to override your needs. It's not your fault. It's simply the pattern you've learned, one that worked before, but no longer fits who you're becoming. Now, the universe is inviting you to write a new vibration into your life. And it doesn't require drama or confrontation. It begins quietly, internally, and most powerfully with clarity. Saying no is not rejection. It is redirection. It's a way of keeping your energy clean, your path clear, and your soul untangled. There's a soft kind of courage that comes with setting boundaries, not to push others away, but to invite yourself back in. That's the frequency shift this moment is asking of you. Because when you stop asking for permission to be yourself, you begin attracting people who celebrate your truth, not just tolerate your presence. The law of attraction, in its simplest form, reminds us that what we broadcast is what we call in. So when you begin honoring your truth, even in the smallest ways, in the meals you choose, the messages you don't respond to, the time you take for yourself, the universe responds. It doesn't just listen to what you say you want. It listens to what you consistently allow. That's why your actions matter more than intentions. Not because the universe is testing you, but because it's mirroring you. This week, allow your energy to become the message. Begin aligning what you think, feel, and do not for perfection, but for integrity. And one way to help anchor that energy is with a simple affirmation: I owe no one anything in order to live as myself. Let that be your filter. Let it guide your choices, your boundaries, your next conversation. It's not about shutting people out. It's about opening up space where your essence can finally breathe. And if you're someone who responds well to visual reminders, consider wearing or surrounding yourself with this week's supportive colors. Soft pastel pink, a hue of gentle self-love, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything to be valid. And turquoise, a frequency of emotional clarity, healing, and internal balance. These colors aren't magic on their own. But when worn with intention, they remind your nervous system that you're choosing peace over people-pleasing, presence over performance. The numbers showing up for you now: 0, 6, 12, and 38 also carry energetic signatures. 6 speaks to harmony and responsibility, asking you to nurture yourself as deeply as you do others. 12 represents spiritual authority and the completion of cycles that no longer serve. And 38 encourages you to blend personal ambition with emotional freedom. Notice which number speaks most to you right now, not with logic, but with feeling. The one that draws your eye or stirs your curiosity may be holding the next step in your path. So take a moment, breathe, and check in with your energy. You don't need to fix everything today. But you can begin. With one choice. One word. One decision that says, I matter. If you feel moved, comment below with the number that called to you and let the universe know you're ready. Not to be someone else's idea of balance, but to finally live in your own. There's something quietly powerful about the way numbers move through our lives, not just as markers of time or measurement, but as symbols the universe uses to speak in a language deeper than words. In numerology, every number carries its own vibration, its own rhythm, and its own lesson. And this week, Libra, you're being asked to listen closely. Not with your logical mind, but with the space beneath your ribs, that intuitive knowing that senses when something is meant for you, even if you can't fully explain why. The number 6 is calling for balance, a concept you know well. But here, balance doesn't mean pleasing everyone or keeping things nice. It means recalibrating where your energy has been overextended. 6 often surfaces when emotional responsibility has tipped into emotional burden, especially when love has become a reason to stay silent, to sacrifice, or to stay small. In your chart, it's a gentle reminder to pause and ask, am I giving from overflow, or from obligation? And more importantly, does this still feel like love if it costs me my peace? Then there's the number 3, which carries the energy of expression and truth. It often arises when your voice has been waiting patiently to be heard. Not in anger. Not in defense. But in clarity. 3 invites you to say the thing you've been holding back, the truth that trembles in your throat but won't go away. This could be a moment for honest conversations, not only with others, but with yourself. What do you know deep down, but haven't yet allowed yourself to admit? The path forward begins not with action, but with truth. And truth doesn't have to be loud to be real. It just has to be yours. And perhaps the most sacred of all 11. This number is often seen as a gateway, a spiritual threshold. It suggests that you're standing at the edge of a deeper awakening. Not necessarily dramatic or mystical, but deeply personal. A moment where you recognize that the way things have been is no longer sustainable and something within you is ready to rise. 11 opens the space for new timing, new insight, new energy. But like any door, it requires a decision. Will you step forward, or stay repeating what you've already outgrown? These numbers aren't just random digits. They are energetic keys. And they often find us just when we're ready to listen. So if one of them feels like it's tugging at you, if you've been seeing it, or feeling it, or it simply stands out, don't ignore that. That's the nudge. That's the invitation. You might even want to write that number down and sit with it. Ask yourself what part of your life it connects to. What it's asking you to change, or release, or claim. There's a quiet wisdom in acknowledging the signs, and even more strength in responding to them. You don't have to figure everything out at once. But this much is true: you don't need to carry another cycle of imbalance, of silence, or of waiting for someone else to give you permission. The moment to realign begins now. Not when it's perfect. Not when it's safe. But when you choose. If any of these numbers spoke to you, 6, 3, or 11, share it below. Let it be a gentle act of affirmation, of alignment, of saying yes to what's next. Not just as a comment, but as a promise to yourself. One small way of saying, I hear it. I see it. And I'm ready. Maybe now, as you sit with all of this, something deep inside you is beginning to settle. Not because everything is perfect or figured out, but because something finally feels seen. This journey, Libra, hasn't been about blame or anger. It's been about clarity. And clarity, for you, is the first breath of freedom. From the moment you arrived here, you were already listening to your soul's quiet nudge. The signs, the numbers, the energies, they've all pointed in the same direction, back to you. Back to your voice, your truth, your balance. You've carried so much in silence. Smiled through discomfort. Smoothed over what felt unfair, all in the name of peace. But real peace doesn't ask you to sacrifice yourself. It doesn't ask you to stay silent just to keep the room calm. It doesn't ask you to stay small so others feel bigger. What you've experienced may have been called love, but if it cost you your voice, your freedom, your light, was it truly love? What if you didn't need to be the peacemaker anymore? What if, instead, you became the protector of your own peace? What if your balance didn't depend on how others treated you, but on how deeply you honored yourself, even when it was inconvenient? The truth is, you don't have to suffer in silence to prove your worth. You don't have to twist yourself into shapes that others prefer just to feel safe. You are allowed to take up space, to say no, to change your mind. You are allowed to grow out of the roles others placed on you. And the moment you decide that being fully yourself matters more than being approved of, you begin living from a place of quiet power, the kind that doesn't beg to be understood, but simply is. So I'll ask you now, not as someone preaching from a distance, but as someone walking beside you, are you still calling something love that keeps you small? Are you still calling something loyalty that keeps you silent? Are you still calling something balance that drains your light? If you feel ready to reclaim that light, even if it's just a flicker right now, comment below, I am my own balance. Let that be your declaration, your turning point, your energetic boundary. Not to push anyone away, but to finally come home to yourself. And before you go, let me say this from the heart, thank you. Truly. Thank you for showing up, for listening, for being brave enough to explore these questions with me. Every view, every like, every comment, every subscriber, it's not just support for this channel. It's a signal to the universe that you're ready. That you're no longer ignoring the signs. That you want truth more than comfort. That you want healing more than hiding. You are not alone on this journey. This space, Zodiac Whisper Tarot, was created for souls like yours. So if this message spoke to you, please subscribe, like, and share with someone else who might need it too. Let's keep this healing ripple alive. And remember, balance doesn't mean holding everything together for everyone else. It means no longer breaking yourself apart to make others feel whole. You are allowed to live a life that feels like peace, not just looks like it. And you, Libra, deserve nothing less.